When the World Rewrites You by No Sleep Scribe. Welcome, listeners. Have you ever been misunderstood so completely that you start to wonder if you were the mistake? Most of us spend our lives trying to convince the world we're something that we're not. Kinder, stronger, more stable, more human. But what if the world decided to do it for you? What if strangers remembered you as a hero and reality agreed? What if gratitude became pressure, turning belief into law? And every time you hesitated, someone else paid the price. So dim the lights, get comfortable, and remember, in some places, goodness doesn't stay in people's hearts. It becomes real. This is a work of fiction. Please listen with the lights low. And remember, there are places where belief isn't just a feeling, it's a law. If you enjoy psychological horror, atmospheric storytelling, and slow burn dread, you're in the right place. Welcome to Creepy Chronicles for No Sleep Nights. Stay a while and be good. Story written and narrated by No Sleep Scribe. Like what you hear? Subscribe for more original dark fiction. Leave a comment. What parts stayed with you? Share with someone who loves unsettling stories. Content note: this story includes sudden death, grief, and psychological coercion. Listener discretion is advised. When the World Rewrites You by No Sleep Scribe. My name is Adrienne Winthrop, and I used to understand how the world moved. Most people think life is chaos, emotion, randomness. They're wrong. Life is a chessboard, orderly, logical, predictable. Every smile is a move. Every handshake is a trade. Every whispered complaint is a piece you can reposition if you're patient enough. And I was patient. Manipulating the game didn't make me happy. It relieved the boredom. Kindness was a suit I wore, not a virtue I possessed. My wife, Victoria, she noticed patterns. She never accused me, never fought. She just narrowed her eyes in the quiet moments, those rare seconds when I thought no one was watching. And she never asked for my help, because she knew my help came with strings made of steel. I never faltered until I did. It started on my morning walk. A homeless man stepped out of the shadows like he'd been waiting for me. He looked at me as if I was a sunrise. "Thank you," he said, voice trembling, "for saving me." I stopped, frowned. I didn't recognize him. I hadn't given him money, not a coin, not a word. But the gratitude in his eyes was real. Then the donations appeared. Not the one I orchestrated for tax breaks or press coverage. These were small, anonymous, deliberate, in my name. Notes came with them. "Your generosity has changed lives. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for helping when no one else would." I stared at one envelope on my desk like it was an insect I couldn't identify. I didn't remember signing up for a fundraiser. I didn't remember caring. By midweek, the city seemed to conspire. Streets bore my name in places I'd never visited. Parents whispered about how I rescued their children from accidents I'd never witnessed. Strangers swore I saved their lives, down to the exact time and place. Each story carried the weight of truth, even though I knew I had done nothing. I sat in my office staring at a spreadsheet of achievements I didn't remember earning, as if someone had been living my life in parallel, a kinder version of me, a warmer one. And the idea was absurd until it wasn't, because the evidence kept piling up. And the more people believed, the more the city seemed to depend on it. My first test arrived mid-afternoon. My assistant knocked softly. "Sir," she said, voice shaking, "Margaret Linton's husband passed early this morning." I knew Margaret Linton. She donated a six-figure sum to my foundation, bragged about it in every room she entered, emailed me directly expecting a thank you note, a photo op, maybe a plaque. She didn't give because she cared. She gave because she expected a return. And I never replied. I didn't even glance at her donation. The next morning, Margaret woke to a silent house. Her husband was slumped on the living room floor. A massive stroke, the doctor said. Instantaneous. No warning signs. Perfectly healthy the day before. Margaret's generous gift, my silence, her husband's death. Coincidence, obviously. But it didn't feel like coincidence. I left the office without a word and walked the streets with my hands in my pockets. People smiled at me, waved, thanked me. A few fell to their knees. A mother pressed her child's hand to my chest and whispered like she was giving communion, "You saved us." My skin crawled because the city no longer moved like a chessboard. The pieces were moving themselves to match a version of me that didn't exist. 3 days later, my receptionist approached again, as if she were afraid to speak too loudly. "Sir, the new community center Mr. Penfield built in your honor. There's been a horrible accident." Darius Penfield had sponsored the building in my name. He'd been promised a ribbon cutting and a speech. I canceled at the last moment. No explanation. That afternoon, the building partially collapsed. It narrowly avoided turning into a mass casualty event, only because a janitor that left early accidentally triggered an alarm that caused the kids to be evacuated. The news praised me anyway. My name continued to glow in the press, and Darius Penfield's reputation sank like a stone. The city was making something clear. People who trusted my goodness and were betrayed by my indifference paid for it. Reality punished them. Not me, them. That night I went home to Victoria. She was in the kitchen, eyes sharp, unyielding. I started. "I don't understand. It's impossible." "It's happening," she said. "Everyone believes you're something you're not. It's dangerous." "You called it dangerous," I said. Her gaze didn't blink. "Because when you fail to live up to their belief," she said, "they suffer. Their lives twist." I stared at her. She stepped closer. I used to think you were distant, she said softly. Now I think you're hollow, and the city is trying to fill you. 2 nights later, I attended a fundraising dinner at the Grand Meridian Hotel. I hadn't organized it. I hadn't even known it existed until the invitation arrived. But declining felt dangerous now. My name gleamed in gold above the entrance. Winthrop Initiative, Building a Better City. Inside, laughter and champagne, people moving like worshippers at a polished altar. Then I saw her, a woman in her early 30s, clutching her handbag like it contained her heart. "Mr. Winthrop?" she asked, voice shaking. "My name is Elise Caro," she swallowed. "My son has a rare blood disorder. The hospital said your foundation might help. They said you always do. That you're kind. No flattery, no calculation, just conviction." I almost told her the truth, that approvals took weeks, that I didn't involve myself unless there was something to gain. I almost handed her off to staff. I hesitated, just for a second, maybe 2, and Elise's expression shifted. Not disappointment, something else. A tremor. Her phone buzzed. She answered, confused. "Yes, this is..." Her face drained of color. "What do you mean he collapsed?" The room around us kept laughing, toasting, praising. Elise's voice cracked into something thin and animal. "No, he was stable. Please, put the doctor back on." She staggered, nearly dropped the phone. And in that instant, something in the world tilted, then steadied, like a scale being corrected. Elise's call ended. She didn't scream. She just looked at me, slowly, like an unseen hand was turning her face. "They said it was sudden," she whispered. "They said his heart just stopped." Her tears didn't fall. They hovered, as if even gravity hesitated. "You were going to help," she breathed, not accusing, believing. Reality had punished her, not because I refused, because I hesitated. She backed away, shaking, and ran for the exit. And no one blamed me. They looked at me with awe. Whispers drifted through the ballroom like incense. "He tried to help. Poor woman, if only she'd reached him sooner. He saved so many, but he can't save everyone." The reverence crawled beneath my skin. I walked out into the night, and for the first time, I really understood the rule. On Friday afternoon, my phone vibrated. Uncle Lawrence. Not blood, just the title that stuck. He'd stepped into my childhood like a replacement father, stern affection, thinly veiled favoritism. He was wealthy, and he'd hinted, more than once, that his estate would someday be properly directed. I knew what that meant. "Adrian, my boy," he boomed, "the papers can't stop singing your praises. A good man. Your father would be proud." There it was again. Good. "I've been meaning to contribute," he said. "Something large, something meaningful. I want you to oversee it personally. Lunch tomorrow? My treat?" I should have agreed. The city would have liked that. But I had other plans, a negotiation, a quiet sabotage, a profitable one. And inside me, an old habit whispered, advantage first, always. Tomorrow, I began. I hesitated. That's fine, Lawrence said warmly. We'll talk soon, make plans. The next morning, my phone rang again. It was his attorney. Mr. Winthrop, he began carefully, there's been an incident. My breath thinned. He collapsed last night. Sudden cardiac failure. He didn't make it. At the hospital, they let me see the body. Lawrence lay with his hands folded, death arranged neatly across his face. A doctor spoke in calm clinical tones. No history, no warning signs. 1 minute he was dictating emails. The next, he snapped his fingers softly. In the hallway, a nurse recognized me. Mr. Winthrop, she said, beaming, I just wanted to thank you. Mr. Lawrence told us you inspired him to give back. My stomach turned. Did he donate? I asked. Oh, yes, she smiled. A large pledge. He said you'd promised to help him choose his next perfect cause. Promised. I hadn't promised. I had hesitated. And that was enough. I've always believed conclusions should be tested. So I built an equation. I sat at my kitchen table long after the coffee went cold and wrote, faith plus expectation equals risk. If hesitation killed, what about fulfillment? I hated the question, but not knowing the rules was worse. That afternoon, a case hit my foundation. A father, Arthur Vale, requesting emergency assistance for his daughter's treatment. The staff member on the phone sounded grateful already, just because I was listening. They really believe in you, she said gently. It means everything to them. I felt the noose tighten. I made myself speak. Approve the full amount, I said, immediately, and tell them I personally wish them well. I waited for punishment. Nothing happened. No sirens, no call, no headline. Just quiet. So I chose my control group. A developer named Townsend donated publicly in my honor. He wrote me personally, your ethical leadership inspires us all. It was nauseating. Useful. I scheduled a meeting, confirmed attendance, let him rely on my name. And then, at the last moment, I canceled. No explanation. 2 sentences. Cold. I waited. By evening, I almost convinced myself the pattern was paranoid fiction. Then my phone lit up. Construction collapse at Townsend Development Site. 1 dead, several injured. The sole fatality? Townsend himself, on a rare personal visit to the site to celebrate an upcoming partnership with me. The city didn't target at random. It targeted devotion, reliance. The closer someone stepped into the orbit of my supposed goodness, the sharper the blade became. That's when I realized the truth. Goodness preserved, selfishness killed. But it wasn't fairness. It was extortion, and the city was collecting. I tried to take control. I built projects, foundations, sanctuaries. And somehow, my name stopped being a reputation. It became a religion. After Townsend died, I stopped pretending this was coincidence. I had proof now, a pattern with teeth. So I did what I've always done when the world stopped behaving the way I expected. I tried to take control of the board. If goodness preserved lives, then I would manufacture goodness at scale. Not because I wanted to be better, because I wanted the killing to stop, because I wanted the city off my throat, because I still believed there had to be a way to game even this. I named the project myself, the Winthrop Haven, a flagship philanthropic complex on the old riverfront. Glass, steel, light, a sanctuary for families in crisis, mentorship programs, elder care, a place designed to absorb the city's need and funnel it into something manageable, a controlled burn. The announcement alone made the city swell with gratitude like a living thing. Newspapers ran feature stories. Adrian's vision. Talk shows spoke my name with near religious reverence. An elementary school was filmed on the evening news yelling, "Thank you, Mr. Winthrop," in unison. I watched it all with the detached disbelief of a man hearing rumors about a stranger who shared his face. Because I knew the truth. They weren't praising my work. They were praising an idea of me. And ideas in this city had mass. Faith poured in before the first brick was laid. Anonymous checks, public pledges, gala invites with my name embossed like scripture. I told myself this was good. If they were going to deify me, let them do it under supervision. Let me at least try to mitigate the damage. But faith isn't a resource you can warehouse. It multiplies, it spreads, and it demands. The first donor to fall was a venture capitalist named Rowan Griggs. Loud, expansive, the kind of man who enjoyed applause almost as much as profit. At the launch gala, he threw his arm around my shoulder as cameras flashed. "To the finest man I know," he declared proudly. "Most men trying to convince you to pour your hard-earned money into some do-gooder cause are just scam artists. But not this one." He believed. He relied. He attached his meaning to me. 2 weeks later, Rowan disappeared. His private plane vanished from radar mid-flight. Search teams combed the ocean. Nothing was found. The city mourned him briefly, and then it spoke, softly, reverently. What a tragedy. He admired Adrian so much. He tried to follow his example. Maybe we should name a wing of the Haven after him. The ledger balanced. After Rowan, the pattern stopped pretending. A young tech philanthropist died in a commuter bridge collapse. A developer's heart stopped at a ribbon-cutting ceremony while thanking me from the podium. A retired school teacher crashed her car into a guardrail the day after she wrote me a trembling letter about how I'd restored her faith in mankind. A college student organizing a fundraiser in my name collapsed during a campus run. Healthy one moment, gone the next. They didn't share an age, a profession, a medical history. They shared only one thing. They believed in me. And the city, patient, methodical, devout, collected its tithe. My projects began to feel cursed. Contractors whispered. Board members avoided eye contact when I entered a room. The press carefully avoided the word cause, but sharpened their curiosity around it anyway. I slept in fragments. I stopped tasting food. I started noticing how often people use my name like a prayer. And each time I heard it, something inside reality tightened, like a knot being pulled. At the next board meeting, only half the seats were filled. The empty chairs weren't dramatic. They were worse. They were deliberate. A lawyer cleared his throat. Several major donors have withdrawn, he said carefully. Quietly. They do not wish to be seen as dependent upon your leadership. I understood immediately. They didn't want to die. Aloud, I said, I understand. But the withdrawals had consequences. Construction halted. Vendors backed out. Bankers revised terms with polite smiles that meant no. The haven, my attempt at control, began to crack before it even existed. And still, small donors continued to give. The ones who couldn't afford caution, the ones who lived closest to desperation. A single mother's $50 check, a school teacher's savings bond, a church collection envelope with my name written in careful block letters. Thank you for your goodness. I held the envelope until the paper crumpled. Not because I was angry at them, because I finally saw the trap in full. The wealthy learned the rules and stepped away. The vulnerable stayed close, because hope is the one risk they can't stop taking. And the city didn't punish me for failing them. It punished them, always. That night, I stood at the unfinished riverfront site, wind cutting under my coat, staring at skeletal steel that looked like ribs. I felt like a priest at the altar of a god I didn't believe in, a god that unquestionably existed. I built a shrine to myself, I whispered, and the city accepted the offering. The religious movement started with a flyer. A cheap, glossy square slipped beneath my office door, sky blue, haloed in white. Community Forum, celebrating the spirit of Adrian Winthrop. The photo showed me smiling in a way I didn't remember smiling. Benevolent, approachable, forgiving. I didn't pick the flyer up at first. I walked past it like you walk past a dead animal on the road, pretending it isn't there because acknowledging it feels like participation. But eventually, I bent down and lifted it with the careful resignation of someone handling evidence. On the back were cheerful bulletin points. Volunteer opportunities inspired by Adrian's ideals. Testimonies of personal transformation. Neighborhood unity and gratitude. Candlelight vigil for those guided by his light. Vigil. I didn't go. I wasn't insane. But the city organized itself around me with bureaucratic devotion anyway. Committees formed, names multiplied, meetings, newsletters, legislation, a moral infrastructure built around my face, a religion with spreadsheets. My name was stamped across documents I'd never approved. My ideals became mission statements. My example became policy proposals, and believers multiplied. Victoria watched it unfold, like water rising under a locked door. Over breakfast, she slid her phone toward me. A crowd filled the courthouse steps, hundreds, maybe more, candles, homemade banners, We stand with Adrian. Gratitude is our creed. At the center of the photo, a woman knelt with hands clasped, like the legal system should bend before the weight of her faith. What are they protesting? I asked, voice thin. Victoria swallowed. They say a local grant program turned corrupt. She said, they want your leadership on the ethics committee. I know. She watched me the way you watch someone realizing a room has no exits. They think you're a moral authority, she said quietly. I almost laughed. It came out sharp and brittle. Then they're delusional. Victoria's gaze softened, and that softness frightened me more than anger. Delusion becomes real, she murmured. Hasn't that been the pattern? I didn't answer, because she was right, and I could feel it now, an unseen structure assembling around me, latticework knitting itself into the sky. An institution formed without my consent. Death was at least honest. This was infrastructure. They called themselves the Stewardship Collective. Professionals, civic activists, pastors, teachers, even a surgeon with tired eyes. They requested a meeting. I declined. They persisted. Letters arrived, polite, but heavy with implication. We would be honored to share how your example has shaped our civic conscience. We consider you a guardian of intention. Your presence would bless our work. Bless. The word spider crawled beneath my skin. I relented, not out of duty, out of curiosity. I needed to see what the city had built in my name. They gathered in a repurposed library. Long oak tables, high ceilings, dust floating like elderly angels. I arrived late on purpose. Let them wait. Let them show me who they really were. When I walked in, the room exhaled. Not applause, something worse. Reverence. They rose instinctively, as if gravity had changed instructions. The surgeon stepped forward. Mr. Winthrop, thank you for coming. His voice trembled at the edges. I scanned the room. Charts lined the walls. Neighborhood maps, volunteer rotations, donation streams, legislative proposals, crisis coordination schematics. They built a machine, a moral engine, fueled by my face. My own cult, I muttered. The surgeon flinched. We aren't a cult, he said quickly. Nothing sinister. Then what are you? He swallowed. An alignment of conscience. The school principal spoke next. We believe the city responds to moral leadership, she said carefully. Yours specifically. When you act, goodness ripples outward. A hush fell, every eye fixed on me. Expectation hummed like electricity. I cleared my throat. I am not who you think I am. They smiled gently, the way people smile at a frightened child, insisting the dark is empty. The world disagrees, the surgeon said softly. Someone else added, reality reveals the truest story. My hands curled into fists under the table. People have died, I said. The room bowed its head. We know. whispered a woman with silver hair. Sacrifice attends all sanctified movements. I felt my stomach twist. Ordinary people sincerely prepared to sanctify misfortune in exchange for meaning. They didn't want me to fix things. They wanted me to embody them. Why me? I asked, hoarse. A young volunteer shrugged, as if it were obvious. Because you are what we strive to be. That night I stood at my window again, watching city lights scatter like constellations arranged by unseen hands. I felt it now, not paranoia, a presence, not a being, a pressure, as if belief itself had acquired mass and trajectory. The story of Adrian Winthrop had grown teeth and bones and voting power. I no longer authored it. I was its protagonist and its hostage. My phone buzzed. Winthrop Collective launches citywide volunteer corps. I hadn't approved the name. I hadn't approved anything, but the world had never needed my permission. I stared at my reflection in the glass, a figure haloed by devotion, a saint sculpted from a lie. I'm losing myself, I whispered. Outside, voices drifted up from the street, 2 women passing by. He just inspires the best in people, you know. Yeah, he makes you want to be better. I closed my eyes, because the worst truth of all was this: they weren't wrong. The city was becoming kinder, cleaner, more generous. People fed stray cats. Veterinarians donated time to sterilize them. Groups met on weekends to clean parks and repaint vandalized walls. Food drives expanded into hygiene drives. A Winthrop clothes closet opened. Free clothing, shelves stocked with donated dignity. Goodness multiplied, and every fraction of it chained itself to my name. I found Victoria waiting in my office one afternoon. She didn't look up when I entered. I don't want to bury anyone else because of you, she said softly. Victoria, my voice sounded scraped raw. I'm trying, I said. I'm killing off pieces of myself, but I'm trying. She finally looked at me. There was no accusation in her eyes, only the calm of someone who'd already accepted a truth I refused to name. Gordon's wife, she said. Then she stopped, like saying the rest might make it real again. And the Ellsworth's boy, and the McKay twins. I sit down. I didn't remember deciding to sit. They all donated, she whispered. Recently, generously. Silence opened between us, wide, bottomless. And then you let them down, she said, for convenience sake. My mouth opened. A dozen defenses tried to rise and died before they reached my tongue, because I knew what she was saying was true. And now they're all dead, she choked, and a sob cut her off like a wire tightening. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. I was in the atrium when I heard the noise. Cheers, applause, the rustle of bodies moving as one. People flooded toward the glass doors, phones raised like offerings. A ribbon was across the entrance, red, taut, and beside it stood the mayor, smiling. On behalf of the citizens of this extraordinary city, he announced into a sea of microphones, we dedicate the Adrian Winthrop Center for Human Possibility. The crowd erupted. Winthrop Center, not Halcyon, not Haven. My name, again. A little girl tugged her mother's sleeve and pointed. He saves people, she whispered. I felt cold. I hadn't saved anyone. I hadn't even tried. But the city believed. And belief here was not symbolic. It made things real. Victoria's hand touched my back. Neither comfort nor condemnation. Simply present. You're becoming what they need, she said quietly. No, I said, because becoming good meant surrendering control. It meant caring. It meant letting the world inside of the fortress I'd spent my whole life building. And that was one fate I couldn't bear. Outside, someone began chanting my name, my name, my name, my name. And somewhere in the city, a donor's heart misfired. I woke to a silence that felt heavier than any siren. Fog pressed against the windows. Street lights hummed. Even the river looked like it was holding its breath. At 9:17 a.m., my laptop chimed. Gas leak. Structural collapse. Casualties confirmed. I read the words the way you read a foreign language badly, meaning trailing behind sound. Then the list of names loaded, and the language became fluent. Victoria appeared beside me without knocking. Her face was pale. Her eyes were storm clouds. It's the city, she whispered. It's everywhere now. Every time you refuse, this happens. I closed the laptop, closed my eyes. Every manipulation I've ever used to win social battles, meaningless. There was no angle, no clause, no seam in reality. The city did not negotiate. Pain wasn't collateral anymore. It was the metric. I whispered, I can't win. Victoria's stare didn't soften. She had known this moment would come. No, she said, you can't. A beat, then quietly. But you can lose with dignity. I didn't sleep after that. I lay awake with my eyes open, feeling something patient and merciless waiting inside the walls. Not a monster, not a voice, a rule. By the next morning, the decision felt like it had been made for me. Not consciously. I would never admit that. But it sat in my chest like a stone. I would obey. Not for redemption, not for virtue. For control. Because if goodness was the language the city spoke now, I would learn it fluently. I would master it. I would bend even morality to my will. I showered, dressed, chose a suit without thinking about how charitable it made me look. Didn't check the mirror. The world would do that for me. At breakfast, Victoria watched me like a nervous sparrow. You look, she began. Different? I finished. She nodded. Where are you going today? I held her gaze for a long moment. To help, I said softly. The word landed between us like a fragile artifact. Victoria nodded once, slow, as if afraid to disturb it. Be careful, she whispered. I didn't know if she meant be careful of the city or be careful of myself. I chose something small, not halcyon, too public, not the Haven, too hungry. A battered after-school arts program tucked into the back of an old church on Ellis Street. They were losing funding. Rent was due. Volunteers were tired. But children painted there. I remembered paint once. A school assignment. A blue landscape. My teacher called it honest. I hated that word. I called the director, an elderly woman named June, whose voice sounded lined with kindness. I'd like to visit, I said. There was a heartbeat of silence. Mr. Winthrop, she breathed, you already do so much. No, I interrupted, I don't. Another pause, then gently, well, we'd love to meet you anyway. Ellis Street smelled like rain and bread from a bakery across the street. Inside the church hall, children darted past like comets. A girl with paint on her hands nearly collided with me, froze, and then lit up like she'd seen a miracle. Thank you, Mr. Winthrop. I flinched. June appeared, short, round, undeniably real. You came, she said. I did. She pressed a cup of tea into my hands like refusal was not an option. Then she told me what they needed. Not theatrically, not pleading, just explaining. Staff shortages, heating issues, a boy whose mother worked nights, whose only safe hours were spent under flickering fluorescent lights in this room. I listened, really listened. Not for advantage, not for leverage. It felt like walking barefoot across unfamiliar ground. June smiled at me in a way that made no demands. You don't have to fix anything, she said. Just being interested helps. No one had ever told me that. I hated how it tightened my throat. I will fix something, I heard myself say. I sat down at a table and drafted a grant on my laptop. Straightforward, no loopholes, no reputation laundering. Clean. I wrote a personal note to accompany it. This place matters. The words looked alien on the screen, like someone pretending to be me. But they were true. I closed the laptop. Let the children show me their work. A painting of a blue house, a clay bird with crooked wings, a collage of torn newspapers that spelled, "Home is where you can be wrong." I almost laughed, almost. For one precarious hour, the city stopped holding its breath. I had done something genuinely good, and nothing broke. No sirens, no tragedy, no correction. For the first time since the world turned strange, my shoulders loosened. Perhaps I could survive this. Perhaps goodness was just another suit I could learn to wear. But the city didn't interpret my kindness as a choice. It interpreted it as confirmation, as proof, as destiny. It accelerated committee meetings, school openings, charity breakfasts, endless hands reaching for me. Every smile carried consequences. When I misjudged a timeline, a volunteer slipped on a wet floor. When I failed to review a minor budget adjustment, a grant arrived late. When I hesitated, even for a heartbeat, someone's life tilted. Reality didn't punish me maliciously. It just enforced, like a ledger stamping itself. I became trapped in an endless arithmetic of morality, and I learned quickly. There was no finish line, no point at which the city would say, "Enough, you've paid your debt." It only wanted more, more presence, more intention, more sacrifice. My selfishness had once been private. Now it had a body count. So I stopped being selfish. Not because I became virtuous, because I became afraid of what my emptiness could do. Months passed. The city was kinder, cleaner, more generous. Programs thrived, lives improved, and my name was on all of it like a watermark. Streets bore my name, centers, initiatives, plaques. Children learned it in school. Adults spoke it with a softness usually reserved for saints and dead relatives. I smiled at children, spoke gently to the elderly, shook hands with donors, mediated disputes, built systems that worked. And somewhere, deep inside, I mourned the man I had been. Not because he was good, because he had been mine. Late one night, I stood alone on a rooftop terrace above the city. Wind tugged at my coat. Lights pulsed below like a living nervous system. I whispered into the dark. I obey. I do what you demand. The city didn't answer. It didn't need to, because the answer was everywhere. In the crosswalk signs blinking in unison, in the trains arriving precisely on time when I stepped onto the platform, in the way strangers nodded at me like they were reassured simply by my existence. At home, Victoria remained my anchor. She never praised, never condemned. She only reminded me, quietly, you can't save everyone at once, but you must save what you can. Sometimes I caught her watching me across the dinner table with an expression I couldn't name. Not admiration, not fear. Something closer to reluctant belief. And I realized, with a cold twist in my chest, the city wasn't the only thing being rewritten. Years later, children still spoke my name like a prayer. And I smiled when they did it. Not because I wanted to, because there was no version of me left that knew how not to. Reality was a ledger. I was its debt. And the city, patient, devout, unblinking, kept me paid in full.